Hi everyone, Gabe here with GBR Music. Thank you so much for checking out this video and welcome to a new episode of From Piano to Full Orchestra in 10 minutes. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to get from this to this. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to get from a piano sketch to a fully orchestrated segment. And one of the reasons I'm making these videos is to kind of take the fear away from orchestration and show you that with just one simple idea and a few simple orchestration techniques, you can turn a very simple piano sketch into a much bigger sounding final product. In this video, I'm going to be using some of my favorite sample libraries, including BBC Symphony Orchestra Pro by Spitfire Audio and some native instrument plugins, which I think work well with this type of music and which are popping up on your screen right now. But if you don't own these, no problem. You can follow along with the sample libraries you own. And if you're totally starting from scratch, I highly recommend you go download the free version of BBC Symphony Orchestra on Spitfire Audio's website. It sounds great, and it will give you all the tools you need to recreate the example we're going to be working on today. As usual, I'll include a free download link in the video description to the stems of this project so that you can open them in your own DAW and solo every track and really get under the hood as you're following along with the tutorial. And if you'd like to get the Logic session or the MIDI files, you can do so by heading to my Patreon page where they're available for downloads to anyone who supports me there. Last but not least, if you enjoy this type of content and would like to see more, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be notified every time I upload a new video. It really helps, and it really keeps the motivation going to bring new content to you guys. And now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so here we are in Logic Pro, where I have all the tracks of my orchestral arrangement ready, and as you can see, it is not that many tracks. I only have 12 tracks for the orchestra and 2 for the piano. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mute everything and we're going to rebuild the arrangement by starting with the basses and moving up the frequency spectrum with the higher pitch instruments. But before we do this, let's do a quick analysis of the piano sketch real quick so that we know what we're working with. So we're in D minor and the piece is in 6/8, and it's very simple. It's only 5 chords. We start on D minor, going down to C major, and then up to F major. And then we go up to G minor, and finally up to A major. All right, so let's take a quick look at the melody, which is also very simple. We start on a D, and then the melody takes us to an E natural, which is the major third of the next chord, C major, and then up to F, the root of the next chord after that. And here we have this little melodic scale, which is pretty much just an F major chord with the root played first, the fifth, and then the third on top. And then the melody brings us to a B flat, which is the major third of the next chord, G minor. Little melodic scale to bring us to the next chord, which is A major. And here we have that little melodic scale again, with the root, the fifth below, and the major third at the top. So very simple stuff, but also very powerful. Like, music doesn't need to be complicated to sound good. So this is to show you that you can do a lot with very simple devices. All right, so now let's move on to the orchestration proper. So as I said before, we're going to start with the sections of the orchestra that play the bass part, and then we'll move up the frequency spectrum to add the rest, and we'll finish with the melody. So I have everything muted except for the basses, and the basses play a very simple part. They play the roots of every chord in dotted quarters, since this is 6/8, and they play it with a spiccato articulation. So this is how this sounds like. And on top of the basses, I have the cello playing the exact same line with the same articulation, but an octave higher, which helps give a little more definition to the bass line. And to give this bass line a little more punch and a little more oomph, I have the bass trombone section double what the bass play at the same octave with a staccato articulation. Here's how that sounds. So with the combination of the cello, the basses, and the bass trombone, we have a nice heavy bass, but that will also cut through the rest of the orchestra nicely, making sure we can hear it clearly. Now let's move on to the rest of the string section. So the rest of the string section plays a rhythmic ostinato that really gives the piece its motion. It really kind of makes you think of, a fellowship of misfit heroes riding into the sunset towards the enemy, but with a smile on their face, because Hollywood. So this ostinato is played by the violas, the second violins, and the first violins, and they all start on a different note of the chord. For example, the violas start on an F, the minor third of D, the second violins start on an A, the fifth of the chord, and the first violins start on a D, the fundamental. But to take the case of the violas, it's not because they play the third of the first chord that I'm going to have them play thirds throughout the whole piece. Instead, I'm going to use the closest note in terms of interval into the next chord to create more melodic and linear lines that avoid huge intervallic jumps. This will result in more beautiful sounding melodies, and also it will help highlight the harmony of the piece. So for example, you see that the viola starts on the F, which is the minor third of D minor, and then they go to E, which is the major third of C major, and then they go to F, which is the root of the next chord. So this is the principle on which we're going to build those strings. So I'm going to start by just layering the violas on the bass we already heard, and then I'll just stack up the second violins and the first violins on top of that. So here are the violas. Violin 2, violins 1, So as you can see, there's harmony, but there's also melody weaved into it, which is really what you want to do because it keeps things interesting. Oh, and I forgot to mention that just like the basses and the cello, the violas, the second violins, and the first violin play with a spiccato articulation that really helps this ostinato cut through the rest of the orchestra. All right, so now we have done pretty much the bones of the piece. So let's add the melody. And for the melody, just because I like the grandiose character of it, I gave it to the French horns, and I also want them to be a little more reinforced in the higher frequency, so I also had it doubled by the woodwind section. And for the woodwind section, I kind of used a global woodwind section that mashes all the woodwinds together, which is not the most orchestral thingly correct thing to do, but for the purpose of what we're doing here, it totally works. What's important though is to make sure to pick the right articulations if you want it to sound realistic. And in this case, it's only two articulations. It's a long articulation for the longer note and the staccato articulation for the shorter ones. So this is how the melody sounds played by the woodwinds and the French horns. And now with the rest of the orchestra. So we're already starting to hear the full arrangement now, and what we need is just the finishing touches. So to give this whole piece a bit more oomph and a bit more power, it would be nice to have some percussion included. And it turns out I have just the right plugin for that, and that plugin is Action Strike by Native Instruments. So I'm just going to play you what I did, because I just literally played one single note to add this kind of bed of percussions under the piece. And then I have a second instance of Action Strike, which is open below. And in this one, I'm playing more hits that I played myself just to add, you know, some diversity and some accents and breathe more life into the piece. And that's it. Now the next thing was to add a couple cymbal rolls and cymbal hits just to add to the grandiose aspect of this. So this is what I did. And here is what that sounds like. So as you can see, very, very simple ingredients. It's really when you bring them together and all those little details that really bring the piece alive. And the last effect I added was a kind of hybrid orchestral rise. That's also a contact library that I really love to use, and that's actually one of my favorite sounds, called Rise and Hit. And this one is called Chaos Stairs. So a really nice pre-made, great sounding effects that really add a lot of drama. So now let's hear all the percussions and all the effects together. So it's really an orchestra within the orchestra. But you get the idea of what's going on. And that's it. That's pretty much the whole orchestral arrangement. Those 12 tracks together create this orchestral arrangement. So now that we did it, let's just end by listening to the full thing. And here we go. So there you have it. I really hope you had a good time watching this tutorial and that you learned something by doing so. And if by any chance you end up recreating this example with your own sample libraries, I'd love to hear how it sounds. So don't hesitate to post the results in the comments below. And also, of course, if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them. So don't hesitate to ask me in the comments below as well. If you haven't done it yet, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be notified every time I upload new content. This is it for today. This was Gabe with GBR Music, and until next time, take good care of yourselves.